Dictators, the world over, these types of world leaders have reigned supreme, significantly affecting the state of the world, the countries they command and the countries that it allies or fights against. Here are 6 of the absolute worst dictators in history. Pol Pot. Pol Pot was a Khmer political leader who led the Khmer Rouge totalitarian regime from 1975 to 1979 in Cambodia that imposed severe hardships on the Cambodian people. His radical communist government forced the mass evacuations of cities, killed up to 3 million people during the Cambodian genocide, and left a legacy of brutality and impoverishment. An opponent of the Norodom Sihanouk government and of the military government of General Lon Nol, he led the Khmer Rouge guerrilla forces in their overthrow of Lon Nol's regime in 1975. He became the Prime Minister of the new Khmer Rouge government from 1976 until he was overthrown by invading Vietnamese in January 1979. It is estimated that from 1975 to 1979, under the leadership of Pol Pot, the government caused the deaths of more than 1 million people from forced labour, starvation, disease, torture or execution, while carrying out a programme of radical social and agricultural reforms. Leopold II. Although Leopold II established Belgium as a colonial power in Africa, he is best known for the widespread atrocities that were carried out under his rule, as a result of which as many as 10 million people died in the Congo Free State. While he did much to establish Belgium as an economically and militarily stable power in Europe, he is chiefly remembered for the nightmarish practices that were carried out in his name. He was the architect of one of history's greatest, if lesser known, crimes against humanity. He implemented a forced labour system in the Congo that was quickly copied by other European colonial powers. This brutal practice was a catastrophe for the population of the Congo, and Leopold was eventually forced to give up his hold on the colony. Joseph Stalin. Joseph Stalin was the premier of the Soviet state, who for a quarter of a century dictatorially ruled the Soviet Union and transformed it into a major world power. During the quarter of a century preceding his death, this Soviet dictator probably exercised greater political power than any other figure in history. Stalin industrialized the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, forcibly collectivized its agriculture, consolidated his position by intensive police terror, helped to defeat Germany in 1941-45, and extended Soviet controls to include a belt of Eastern European states. Chief architect of Soviet totalitarianism and a skilled but phenomenally ruthless organizer, he destroyed the remnants of individual freedom and failed to promote individual prosperity. Yet he created a mighty military-industrial complex and led the Soviet Union into the nuclear age. Though a high industrial output was indeed achieved under Stalin, very little of it ever became available to the ordinary Soviet citizen in the form of consumer goods or amenities of life. A considerable proportion of the national wealth was appropriated by the state to cover military expenditure, the police apparatus, and further industrialization. After the war, Stalin imposed on Eastern Europe a new kind of colonial control based on native communist regimes nominally independent but in fact subservient to himself. Stalin's regime oversaw mass repressions, ethnic cleansing, and famines. Before the Soviet Union dissolved, some historians estimated that Stalin's regime killed 20 million or more people. Genghis Khan. Genghis Khan was a Mongolian warrior ruler who united nomadic tribes into a vast empire that stretched from the Adriatic Sea to the Pacific coast of China. Born Temujin near Lake Baikal, Mongolia, he came from a poor clan and fought rival clans to establish himself as leader. In 1206 he was acknowledged as Genghis Khan, which means universal ruler. He adapted his warfare methods, using sieges, catapults and ladders to capture cities. Khan conquered large parts of Central Asia and China, and his generals raided lands now known as Russia and Iran. At its peak, the Mongol Empire covered 11 to 12 million square miles, an area about the size of Africa. While the exact number of people killed during the Mongol conquest is unknown, but many historians estimate that it was around 40 million. The Mongols' attacks may have reduced the world's population by as much as 11%. His conquests were so vastly expansive and bloody that it is said that he may have possibly even reduced the carbon footprint of the planet with the amount of people his empire slaughtered. Mao Zedong. Mao Zedong was the principal Chinese Marxist theorist soldier and statesman who led his country's communist revolution. Mao was the leader of the Chinese Communist Party, the CCP, from 1935 until his death. He was chairman, chief of state, of the People's Republic of China from 1949 to 1959, and chairman of the party also until his death. In 1949, after the nationalists had been decisively defeated and retreated to Taiwan, the CCP and its allies founded the People's Republic of China, and Mao emerged as the paramount leader. The CCP attempted to hasten China's industrial development with bold but sometimes harmful programs, most disastrously with the Great Leap Forward that took place from 1958 to 1960. Mao is considered one of the most significant figures of the 20th century. His policies were responsible for a vast number of deaths, with estimates ranging from 40 to 80 million victims of starvation, persecution, prison labour, and mass executions. His regime has been described as totalitarian. In 1966, Mao, who remained in serious disagreement with several other CCP leaders over competing visions for China's future, launched the Cultural Revolution, where followed a period of turbulent struggles between the CCP's radical wing under Mao. It also represented, beyond any doubt or question, however, a deliberate effort to eliminate those in the leadership who over the years had dared to cross him. The victims, from throughout the party hierarchy, suffered more than mere political disgrace. All were publicly humiliated and detained for varying periods, sometimes under very harsh conditions. Many were beaten and tortured, and not a few were killed or driven to suicide. Adolf Hitler. Both in terms of the death count and his level of cruelty, Hitler comes up short to more than a few others on this list. What sets aside Hitler from the others is his association with the Second World War. The other was his pervasive and organised ideology. In a relatively short amount of time, Hitler conquered most of Europe and spread his ideas everywhere. And it resonated, a majority not through consensus but fear, obeyed and perpetuated his thoughts and ideology. Those who thought apart from him didn't dare raise their voices because they saw what happened to those who did. The death count of the Holocaust is said to be around 11 million, which is certainly not the highest war death count it had been till that point, and definitely not more than what was still to come with the more communist-leaning countries like China and Russia. But Hitler's infamy is well deserved, as is the deep-seated hatred for fascism, because this ideology brought about suffering throughout the world. Communism, as abhorrent an ideology it is, has usually seemed to be self-contained within a specific country. Hitler's fascism spread like the plague, knowing no borders, boundaries or divide, and it consumed everything in its path, which is why he deserves the top spot on this list. If you enjoyed that video, please like and subscribe to History Nerd Inc. and ring the bell to be notified whenever our next video drops.